So let me start with the national participants and the national pavilions. The presence of national pavilions is a typical characteristic of the Venice Biennale, differently commented through the years because of excessive criticism or simply because of jealousy, because it's a fundamental aspect of the institutions and of its exhibitions. The national pavilions have always added one very important value to the Biennale. It's pluralism of voices, which in the field of art, in the field of architecture, in the field of whatever, pluralism of voices is a fundamental value that we have always taken care of. But this time, having our curator asked the pavilion to take part directly to the research he has been envisaged for the exhibition, the pluralism turned into a choir and a choral participation that gave and give to the Biennale and to the presence of these pavilions in the Biennale a new flavor, if you want, a new richness, a new perspective. And in any case, it has given new enthusiasm to all of them. The national participations this year were 65, 10 more than the last Biennale of Architecture. I have to mention the 10 countries who are here for the first time, and they are Ivory Coast, Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, Emirates, Indonesia, Kenya, Morocco, Mozambique, New Zealand, and Turkey. For some of them, we have been working hard for the restoration of a new wing of the Arsenale. We have restored 3,000 square meters, and the Arsenale is now hosting as many countries as the Giardini, which is one of the records of this Biennale. The choral aspect of the research conducted by Rem is also can be somehow measured by the very high number of collaborators and contributors that have been working for the exhibition, specifically directed and curated by Rem, and altogether there have been 187. It's a choir, it's at least almost 4 choirs together. The 61 for Elements, 90 for Monditalia, and 36 will be working for the weekend specials. And this leads me to what's going to happen in the coming 6 months. I said that with the project that Rem has been the Rem proposed and all the other directors of the Biennale as enthusiastically accepted. Never the whole Biennale is in one single Biennale, because during the weeks and months that lead us to the second half of November, there is a long program of initiatives of different kind. We have, as I said, I already mentioned, within the Corderie as the project of the Corderie has provided this huge, immense building with different stages, and in these stages we'll have, first of all, 17 weekend specials. They are called weekend specials, but some of them are really much longer than the weekend. because all this will come up for 95 days of activity, well, debates, seminars, and discussions. Then the 23 so-called free ports will take place. This is an idea that Rem has put forward and has been accepted by the countries. Why, beyond having a pavilion, why don't you come to the Corderie to talk about what you have been doing, or to add whatever you want in this research to what you have been showing in your pavilion? And the free port idea is that we are offering a stage to the participating countries, and 23 of them who have accepted to come and to develop either seminar or whatever activity in these stages. Also to favor this, we have changed the time, the opening hours of the Biennale, and on Fridays and Saturdays, the opening hours will be from 10 in the morning to 8 o'clock p.m. for the Arsenale alone, which will allow also to not only to develop all these activities in a sort of giving the public, the visitors, the possibility to attend, but will give also the possibility to develop better the program of dance, music, theater, and film that has been defined for the Corderie, because the directors of dance, theater, and music, the curators of the different activities of these activities of the Biennale, as I said, have accepted enthusiastically to bring in one case, all of their activity planned for this year within the exhibition of architecture, and these activities will take place in those stages that you will see in the Corderie. And the dance, our director is Virgilio Sieni, who is with us today. There will be almost a month and a half of the program will last a month and a half. We will have 272 participants to the festival and college. There will be 139 representations, small, long, or different size, because it's a college, and college is an activity that the Biennale has developed within each of the sectors of her activity to give young artists the opportunity to come and, with the help of masters, to develop specific results and specific work or specific productions. Theater, the College of Theater will take place from the 30th of July to the 10th of August. Here again we have the college working. We have had 1,400 applications from young artists from all over the world. We'll choose 150, 160, and assisted by directors like Mark Ravenhill, Oscar Korsunovas, Fabrice Mourja, Jean Peppelbaum, Louis Pasquale, Antonio Latella, Folk Richter, and Jean Lauers. They will work at the beginning of August and along 3 weeks. Music, from the 3rd to the 12th of October, there will be 51 artists working at the Corderie, rehearsals or performance. And besides that, at the Corderie, as you know, there will be 82 screens with excerpts of 80 of Italian films. Of these, 20 will be performed, they will be screened in integral form or fully. 20 will be on Fridays and Saturdays in this extension of opening time of the Arsenale. Also, in these stages, we have offered these stages to our guests that will come through the program that we call Biennale Sessions. We have invited faculties of architecture to come in a group of at least 50 persons, like students and teachers. Up to now, we have 85 faculties of architecture from all over the world, from Europe, of course, but then from China, from Venezuela, from the United States, Australia. They will come and stay 3 days, and we offer a room for a seminar where they can discuss what they have been seeing, and so to transform the visit into a sort of active visit, which can be considered part of their curricula, part of their research and programs of research. From the end of June to the onwards, we have provided for this, we have provided something which is definitely new, because the corderie, we have installed in the corderie 70 big fan coils that will be working for air control and to make that immense building viable, and for people who will be there as visitors, or in any case for work and on the stages. I leave to Rem, of course, any further comments on the exhibition itself. I was interested in giving you an idea of what will be going on from now onwards for 6 months, and also to justify the fact that we have increased the length of the Biennale from 3 months to 6 months. And not only because we consider finally that after years, and with this one in particular, the Biennale of Architecture can join the major, the sister Biennale of Art, also in the length of time of opening, but also to give an opportunity to a great number of visitors to come. After all, this is a Biennale, is a research Biennale, but the research is interesting not only for those who are working in the field of architecture, it's also a research on what we are capable of demanding to architecture, and it's a check on our capability of expressing demand. And since we can say that the gap between the work of architects and the desire or the need or the perceptions or the capability of expressing demand of individuals and societies and institutions, if this gap widens, the future will be lived in an easy way, whereas architecture lives only if it is felt and desired by all of us. So it's a research on, if you want, on all of us individuals, in our capability to have a dialogue and have a desire for architecture. Finally, I want to, beyond my thanks, warm thanks to all those who have been working for this Biennale, which is an immense list of names that I cannot, of course, even dare to start mentioning. Let me mention our partner Rolex, with our sponsors for Scarini, JTI, Warner Music, and the Consorzio Vede, which have been, of course, of great help in organizing this 6 months extraordinary choral research Biennale of Architecture led by Rem, whom I thank warmly on behalf of all of us, and to whom I give the floor. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paolo. I should maybe start by talking about the initial conversations that Paolo and I had over a couple of years that were always centering around the question whether I could do a Biennale or be a director. And we finally focused on an intense negotiation in which I made only 2 demands, but those 2 demands were eventually met by the Biennale. The first demand was that for once, as a kind of hiatus, it would be a Biennale that would not talk about the current situation of architecture and that would not be emphasizing the production of architects now, but that it would be a Biennale that could look at architecture itself and a Biennale that also would look backwards and forwards, so backwards into history and forwards into the future. I think the word research has become a little bit debased. I consider what we did not necessarily research, but to take the liberty to look at subjects that are not typically addressed in the format of a Biennale. So anyway, cutting with the contemporary was one condition. The second condition was that I would have more time. Instead of 1 year, I would have 2 years. And those extra years, that additional year, I wanted to apply in different forms or invest it in different ambitions. The first one was that I had a feeling that rather than the typical diversity of the national pavilions, it might be interesting to ask national pavilions or suggest national pavilions to create a combined narrative about a particular subject, and because I wanted to create all together a better understanding of our current situation, I suggested that it would be interesting to look at the last century, to look from 1914 to 2014, and I've called that theme Absorbing Modernity. Now, it was in a way a real provocation. Of course, in absorbing modernity, you can look and interpret it in many different ways. I certainly didn't mean it as a documentation of the triumph of modernity. I also did not really want to imply that globalization creates a homogeneous condition in the world. The way I meant the absorbing in absorbing modernity was the same way that a boxer absorbs the blows of his opponent. In other words, I realized that modernization is a very often painful process, but that kind of somehow every nation has been in the last 100 years forced to modernize itself and forced to adapt to a condition that is currently dictating the direction of the world. And that is, of course, also not only true for nations, it's also true for architecture itself. So globally, you could say that this entire Biennale is about the effects of modernization on countries and architecture. Initially, the Biennale was skeptical that I would be able to convince the nations. But what was very surprising and therefore exciting for us is to discover that when we launched this idea the first time, the individual nations seemed to act with a kind of relief And therefore, we were able, I think, to create an orchestra of voices, of different voices that actually clarify what happened the last 100 years. We were absolutely resistant to propose one single formula or a particular way of doing it. There was complete freedom for every nation to either emphasize a single person or to emphasize a decade or to emphasize other aspects. So what you will see is a kind of real diversity of approaches. I've myself only seen the pavilions of Japan, Korea, China, Russia, America, Israel and Switzerland. And I can already notice certain things that were not really present in previous Biennale. I think, for instance, if you look at Korea, China and Japan, you see that the current political tension between these countries, which is very intense, more intense than we may realize here in Europe, that has been leading to a kind of more intense presentation of each country, and so that it created a kind of higher alertness, perhaps, a higher political dimension, and in a perverse way, maybe a kind of inspiration. The other countries that I mentioned clearly all have looked critically and self-critically at themselves and identified and are showing kind of genuinely interesting and for the most part new things, new to me. One of the ironic and maybe also painful conclusions of these 66 national pavilions is that it seems that not a single major architect played an important role in the last century. It's really ironic, not a single pavilion talks about Mies, Le Corbusier or anyone else. So in that sense, it is perhaps a lesson in the importance of architecture, but a lesson in modesty for the big names. The second important way in which we have been able to use the extra time was to, in our thinking about the Arsenale. The Arsenale is a very complex space. It's a very complex space to fill with an exhibition. And I felt that at this moment, architecture does not necessarily have the vigor to do it on its own. So from the very beginning, we have invited the other biennales that the Venice Biennale consists of, dance, theater, music and film, to participate and to work together on the creation of a kind of single environment and the creation of a kind of single combined program. And that is for me also a really crucial part of this Biennale, the energy and the eagerness with which all these previously separate entities actually collaborated in a very intense and mutually reinforcing way on this consensus, on this collective enterprise. And maybe the word collective is important to introduce here, because of course in the last decade we are not really spoiled with collective enterprises. The Arsenale is very long and Italy is also very long, and that the coincidence inspired us to the main direction and the main contents of the Arsenale. We decided to exploit the length of the building to generate a very systematic investigation of Italy, a portrait or a self-portrait that is really like a scan, like a medical scan, divided in particular lines that start in the south and end in the north, that really systematically document the condition of Italy now. And we were able, with the film festival, to make a selection of 80 films that are part of that documentation. And with the Architecture Biennale, we invited 40 architects to help us, many Italian architects, and actually what is for me a key of understanding the Arsenale is that the word about Italy is given to a different generation, roughly speaking between 30 and kind of 45, that in this situation is able to represent their vision of Italy. And if you look very carefully, and I think that many of the projects really deserve the most careful scrutiny, you see that in many cases, the fact that the younger generation is speaking is really radically changing the typical interpretation, radically changing the cliches, and actually creating a kind of subtlety of reading, which in itself is really enriching the story of Italy, but also taking it out of the realm of caricature with which it is typically seen. The different dance, theater and music biennale are also committed to this Italian theme, so that in the end there's a kind of polyphony of voices about Italy. Now, why Italy? Italy is for me the crucial country in the world, and perhaps the most emblematic country in the sense that it has an unbelievable history with incredible ups and downs, unbelievable treasures, unbelievable performance and genius in all the arts, but also in business, religion, etc., etc. So a country of almost unimaginable richness, which nevertheless does not succeed always to live to its maximum potential. And this is not a criticism on my part on Italy, but I see Italy as an emblem of an almost global situation where each country seems to struggle with a real tension between what it is and what it could be. And in almost every case, it could be so much more than what it is. That is obviously part economic, part political, but it seems that currently, particularly, the world is unable to live up to what it could be, and therefore Italy is not taken as a kind of victim, but Italy is taken as an inspiring example of this condition. The third part where we needed time was the exhibition Elements of Architecture, which is based on a study that I've been doing and could only do thanks to my long-standing relationship with Harvard University, and where for 2 years we made a kind of encyclopedic book about each element of architecture seen in isolation, floor, wall, door, etc., etc., but seen in isolation and on itself from the beginning of history and in many different cultures. It's an obvious phenomenon that biennales having been invented in the West are a Western model. What we have tried to do is really radically break with this condition and show also the intelligence of all other cultures in this total. Baratta has named names. I've always been, apart from being an architect, very interested in looking at individual elements and their impact on architecture. In Delirious New York, I wrote about the elevator, the escalator, and air conditioning as making a fundamental mutation or creating a fundamental mutation in architecture itself. And I've pointed out the strange phenomenon that architecture itself, schizophrenic with one leg in the past always and one leg in the present, has somehow not been able to incorporate this mutation in the core of its considerations. So if you would interpret my effort over the past decades, you could see it, my main ambition has been, or one of the ambitions has been, to modernize the discourse of architecture and to modernize architecture history and architecture theory, and to force it to acknowledge that there are certain changes that fundamentally change the way in which architecture can be considered. And that is then also the ambition of this project. For me, that task has become even more urgent and more relevant at this particular moment, because where architecture elements used to be mute and could not speak, the digital introduction of infiltration of particular architectural elements is creating a very new condition where architecture elements are beginning to listen and can even speak back to you and convey the information that they gather to others. So, in other words, I think the architectural community in general has embraced the digital because it made production a lot easier. It also seemed to offer a new world of diversity and variation at the very moment that the architecture imagination must become flatter and flatter. But I suggest that in addition to that enthusiasm, we should also become very critical whether this other aspect of the digital is something that we really should embrace with the same enthusiasm, and if so, how we should channel it to make sure that it doesn't eventually make us escapes architecture from our control. I would never have dared to start this exhibition with this narrow, almost microscopic focus without the example of two friends. One is Stefan Turby, a professor in Munich University, who has written a history about the corridor, and the other is Manfredo de Robeland, who has been writing a history of the false ceiling. And so they both participated in the competition, and were both able to and convince me of the relevance of creating this architecture with maybe a narrow exhibition with maybe a narrow focus, but a focus in depth. What is very critical, and what I already hinted at, this is not an exhibition about the past of architecture and the present, and that then investigates what we lost. It's also very crucially about what we gained, and it is not only about the past, but as much as about the future, and so it tries to cover the entire width. As I said already in the case of Arsenale, this is not an exhibition where many specific architects are showing their work. It's an exhibition where 40 architects have been invited in the Arsenale, and where 6 major universities are collaborating in the Central Pavilion. There's Harvard, Yale, MIT, and Princeton, and there is Shenzhen University and 2 Dutch universities, Delft and Eindhoven in the Netherlands. So rather than individual architects, it's institutions that have contributed. Basically, we have to end kind of with names. In this case, I am really forced to acknowledge the incredible work of AMO that has been able to synthesize a massive quantity of research information and kind of work. And I have to express my gratitude to my entire team, but particularly to Ippo Pasolini, to James West Coast, to Federico Martelli, and to Stefan Peterman, who have been on all levels coordinating this entire effort. And of course, I think of our donors and sponsors. and some foundations who, with breathtaking generosity, have made this possible. And of course, I thank the Biennale for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Rem. May I ask Mrs. Rebecca Irwin, head of the Rolex Institute, to join us.
Good day, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Rebecca Irwin, and I'm very happy and honored to represent Rolex. I'll be very brief. We know the Biennale well. We were present here as a donor in 2010, and as a donor and sponsor in 2012, supporting specific pieces of work. And we've been really pleased to see how the Biennale has developed, and thrilled that it is open now for 6 months. It is truly the world's greatest meeting of architects and the foremost architectural forum. And as such, Rolex is proud to be a partner and official timepiece of this 14th International Architecture Exhibition. And we will be present here for the next 2 editions in 2016 and 2018. This year, Rolex is also supporting Daniel Liebeskin's installation for Venice's own pavilion, Sonnets in Babylon. Rolex is deeply committed to architecture and the field of architecture, and our presence here is an important witness to that. I invite you to visit the Rolex Pavilion here at the Biennale, where you'll discover the story of our connection to architecture. But I will just say briefly that over the decades, we have commissioned local Swiss architects to build our own excellent buildings and headquarters and production buildings. We've commissioned buildings abroad, namely watchmaking facilities. In Pennsylvania, Michael Graves designed the Littitz Watch Technicum. Fumihiko Maki has designed buildings for us in Japan, in Tokyo and Osaka. And since 2002, we've worked with some wonderful architects in the Rolex Mentor and Protege Arts Initiative, which is our philanthropy, which helps young emerging artists work alongside established masters. We've had as mentors Alvaro Siza, Kazuo Sejima, and this year Peter Zumthor. And all these architects have generously shared their time and wisdom with the next generation, an incredible experience for architects at an early stage of their careers. This mentoring program also has mentorships in visual arts, literature, dance, film, theater, and music. So we very much salute Mr. Baratta and Mr. Koolhaas, your inclusion of these disciplines in this Biennale and giving young people the opportunity to be exposed to master artists. Finally, I'm sure most of you know the Rolex Learning Center in Lausanne, where we were the main private sponsor. We have a long relationship with the client, who is the EPFL, the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. They do a lot of work for us in material science and microtechnology for watch design. And the Rolex Learning Center, which was designed by Sana, by Kazuo Sejima and Rie Nishizawa, will surely be, in the years to come, noted as one of the most important buildings of this millennium. And for Rolex, it expresses very much our support for quality and excellence and innovation. So we're proud to be here to play a small part in the field of architecture as a sponsor, as a philanthropist, and ourselves as a commissioner of high-quality buildings. Our support now at the Biennale is part of that story, and we hope that this unique partnership will bear much fruit for the field of architecture. So I'd like to congratulate Mr. Baratta and Mr. Koolhaas and ask you all to enjoy the 14th Biennale di Venezia. Thank you.
Questions from the floor?
I think that one of our intentions in Monditalia was to show the incredible tension that exists between history of Italy, the qualities of Italy, and the way some of these qualities and histories are managed. And in that sense, it's a kind of incident that fits perfectly in the overall picture.
Prego, c'è la signora là.
Thank you. Mejra Mazatric from the Trans magazine of the ETH Zurich Architecture School. I have a question for Mr. Koolhaas. There have been reactions by architecture scholars about your list of fundamental elements of architecture. And these scholars argue that there is one element missing, which is the land underneath the building, which brings into the perspective the notion of real estate as one of the crucial presences of modernity. Can you comment about this, please?
Yes, you're totally right. And we are aware, of course, that there are many different aspects that we did exclude. But I think there is at the same time a kind of presentation of each of the elements that really is very frank and direct about the extent to which market forces have influenced each of the elements in the kind of recent decades. And I think you will also be able to see both in my own text about the exhibition, but also in the case of kind of thwarted or sabotaged developments, such as in the case of the elevator, where actually kind of vastly more ingenious and creative solutions were once proposed and were once possible or seemed possible, and where the market forces, instead of promoting creativity as they are supposedly doing constantly, actually contributed only to kind of flattening and a kind of reduction of possibilities. So there is definitely a kind of critical kind of perspective underlying the entire effort, and a critical political perspective underlying the entire effort. That if we would also have begun to talk about real estate, we could never have managed this this focus. But I certainly realize that and encourage anyone to add that element, which in itself deserves an entire Biennale into itself, perhaps in a different country.
Questo signore, questo.
Grazie. Intanto vorrei dire che i nuovi spazi aperti all'Arsenale sono molto belli, ben restaurati e fanno veramente piacere questa nuova apertura degli spazi all'Arsenale. Then I would like to ask Rem Koolhaas, the total absence of contemporary architecture in this Biennale, not the national pavilions, but the exhibitions of Mr. Koolhaas, the total absence of contemporary architecture is somehow a kind of critical position towards contemporary architecture, or maybe the demonstration of an effective crisis of contemporary architecture. Thank you.
I don't want to see it kind of this simplistically as a kind of diagram, because I'm critical of contemporary architecture. I cancel it and kind of focus on something else. As an architect involved in contemporary architecture, I am submitted every day to forces that are clearly beyond my control, to kind of turmoil, turbulence, but particularly what I think is the most strongest, the strongest effect of all the forces that have been unleashed in the political and the cultural domain since the liberalization initiated by Reagan and Thatcher in the 80s, the way we now embrace the market, or where the market has become the kind of final arbiter of so many forces. For me, the greatest and actually badly documented change is that where even in the beginning of the 80s, an architect typically would be an extension of a state or of a city or of the public domain. and therefore had a theoretical connection with the intentions of the state, whether good or bad, but anyway, there was a connection, and very often that connection was justified in terms of a vision for a collective well-being of a particular society. That what has happened in the last 30 years, that connection has been totally cut. And we are now more typically working for, not for a collective vision, but for the individual vision of either people or corporations. And there again, I would say that shift is very visible under the microscope of the exhibition, but at the same time, and it's of course connected to real estate, to also combine it in this exhibition would have been too complex. What I intend with this exhibition is simply not a warning, but a moment of a pause. I mentioned in the beginning hiatus. That is for me the most precise term that characterizes this effort, a hiatus, so that in that hiatus we can think or begin to think.
Prego, sono due mani. Uno, due.
Riccardo Salvi, RSI Rete 2. A question to Mr. Koolhaas. After the work you did for the Biennale, what is your opinion about national identities or cultural identities, maybe we should better say?
Well, first of all, obviously, I think there are too many opinions in the world. An opinion about national identity is worth nothing. It's only my opinion. What I was interested, initially I started with a kind of skepticism about the relevance of the National Pavilion as a lens to look at the contemporary world. But as I went along, as I saw what was developing in each of the curators' efforts, and what I heard on our final kind of reunion, where every curator announced their plans in a kind of session of 66 narratives, is that completely regardless of my opinion, the national state or national entity is still an extremely important, relevant, and very often tortured entity. I was really genuinely taken aback how in the last 100 years, for my present condition of relative comfort, I personally was not prepared for the amount of, maybe torture is really the only word. There was almost not a single country that had not been destroyed once, divided once, kind of sold once, rebuilt once, and destroyed again and rebuilt again. Or revolutionized, counter-revolutionized. The intensity of all these narratives and how unique each of them was really made it very, very clear that for the time being and for the foreseeable future, the national entity remains a very productive way of looking at culture and looking at the world.
E poi lì, ecco.
Hi, I'm Evrim Altu from Istanbul, Turkey for Arts Unlimited magazine. I would like to ask to Mr. Koolhaas on position of the nature against the modernity or these fundamentals, these exhibitions. What will we do, what should we do as individuals or as citizens of these countries at the age of global warming, etc.?
Basically, it's very difficult to. I'm of a generation, and maybe I should admit that frankly, that has a very great resistance in telling other people what to do. Or the question, what should we do, fills me with a kind of nervousness. we have always, as a generation, considered it more critical to offer insight and then to invite others to work with that insight and to use that insight as a form of informing their own intelligence. So don't expect any rules here. On the other hand, there are many things you can say. For instance, if you mention global warming, one aspect that we have tried to resurrect is the intelligence of other ways of doing it, and particularly the intelligence of, for instance, Chinese tracts or treatises about architecture that are maybe 1,000 years ago, but that actually in many ways address issues that we are wrestling with today, such as corruption, value engineering, kind of market forces, etc., etc. So one thing I can say is that it's important not to look at global warming or at sustainability as an issue that is suddenly imposed on architecture, and that now architecture should be completely mobilized to address. I would rather say that architecture always has had a kind of deep intelligence about a surprising amount of issues in a surprising amount of different cultures. For instance, look at all the houses, Indonesian houses, in the roof part of the exhibition, and see how each of them performs perfectly in an incredibly hot climate without air conditioning or anything else. What for me is the greatest beauty of architecture is an accumulated intelligence that if you would be able to work with that accumulation has a lot to say and a lot of relevance to any current issue, and not to press architecture or mobilize architecture.
We can leave the room. Once again, many thanks to Rem, thanks to all of you. Bye-bye.